Hello, my excellent biologists. We are continuing on chapter 32 about behavior. And if you are new to my videos, you will see down in the descriptor of the video, you will see a link to the group shared notes that my students use. They are 2-column notes. First column, you can fill in the notes from this video. Second column, you can add in pictures and things that are helpful. All right. So we have already discussed part 1, and now we are on part 2. And we're going to start talking about behavioral ecology. And let me get myself in presentation mode here. Let me move up here. All right. And we're going to focus, if you look at your group shared notes, we're at 32.3. So this is adaptive mating behaviors. So to learn about those, we need to learn another term called behavioral ecology. So behavioral ecology is looking at how does natural selection shape the behaviors that we have. And the assumption is that if there's a certain behavior that takes place, whether it's a dance or in this case, cleaning you for bugs and a snack, that if that behavior is persisting now, it must have been adaptive and it must have been selected for, right? So for your notes for behavioral ecology, the study of how natural selection shapes behavior, And you see in number 1 in the notes that I talk about certain behaviors have a genetic basis. So we already talked about that in video 1. And therefore, behaviors observed today must have an adaptive value, So let's look at one of those behaviors. And one of those is female choice. So female choice, when you talk about what, and females don't always have the choice, right? Sometimes they just are part of a group and there is no choice. But when females have a choice, right, there are 2 hypotheses as to why they choose who they choose. So the first one is good gene hypothesis, that they see an organism that's stronger and bigger and leader of the pack. And so that's who they want to mate with, because it would be like if you went to a sperm bank, you would want to get the best sperm possible, right? So it improves the chances of survival for your offspring. Okay, the second hypothesis is the runaway hypothesis. They're running away with some trait, like this peacock right here, yeah? So all these feathers, and his appearances are bright or colorful. He can do a special dance that you like. And when you look at that, the runaway hypotheses, these 2 can overlap a little bit in the sense that if his feathers are super bright colored and he looks healthy, maybe he has good genes. Also, if this peacock is able to escape a predator, maybe he too has good genes. So maybe it overlaps just a little bit, but it has certainly been selected for things like birds to have these wild dances and songs they do in order to get some sort of female. If I were to put these in human terms, I would say good gene hypothesis is be like if a female chose a partner based on money, right? Cheddar. And runaway hypothesis would be if a female chose a partner based on how good looking they are. All right. So let's go here. This is the bowerbird. In class, I'll show you this video, but this particular bowerbird sets up a whole like thatching, a backdrop. That's the bower. And then he goes and collects blue things. If you think about the natural environment, green things, brown things, they're out there all the time, but blue things would be a little bit more rare. He will literally grab every blue thing he can and put it in front of his bower and then dance in order to attract a mate. Now, if she rejects him, and he's like, oh, I got to get more blue things, another bowerbird could go and steal his blue things. Bowerbirds do other things too. They do dances. They look like little flamenco dances, and I'll show you some of those in class. They're pretty cool. All right. Sexual selection. I know some of you are going to look at this picture and be like, oh my gosh, Mrs. Sloan, this is offensive. It may be, but this is biology. When you look at this cartoon, this explains a lot about biology. If you look what her thoughts are about love, right? Companionship and partnership. But you need to think about her reproduction. She will generate 1 egg a month. one egg a month that could possibly get fertilized. And during that time, when the embryo is developing, she is at risk, right? She's not going to be able to run as fast, maybe not be able to get as much food. I'm talking about mammals in general, not be able to get as much food. When she gives birth, then she's vulnerable because she has to take care of herself and baby, providing food and protection for both. Okay, so that's why she would be looking for that connection, that love. Now, over here, you can see what he's looking at. That's because in the time I've even been showing you this slide, men out there have made about 5,000 sperm just in the time that I'm showing you this slide. Okay, they are going for quantity over quality. And I'm not saying all men do that or people do that. I'm just saying the biology part. And so they are looking to see who can they implant that sperm in. Whereas the female is going over quality over quantity because she only has one egg and he literally has thousands and thousands and thousands of sperm. So try not to get offended on that. I'm just talking about the genetics of it. Okay, so sexual dimorphism, and we cannot apply this to humans, right? Because we no longer live in a binary world where females need to look this way and males need to look this way, okay? Just apply this to mammals, not people, okay? Sexual dimorphism is where the male and the female look remarkably different, right? You can distinguish. You can see the male lion here. You can see the female lion look absolutely different. Birds of paradise. Here's the female, kind of tan, not looking like real colorful or anything. This male, he's literally leaned over and he's going like this with his feathers. He jumps around, makes clicky noises and screeches in order to draw her attention. Okay, look at the elephant seals. Sexual di means two. Very different because they have different roles in their populations and how they interact. Same thing here for the pheasant. The male is prettier. I want you to just think for a minute. Think about the roles they play. Think about reproduction and think about why would the female, at least with the birds over here on the right side of your screen, why would they be so plain? Why would it be advantageous for them to be plain? Make a hypothesis. And probably I'm asking an ed puzzle question here. And hopefully you said, because they're the ones who would be sitting on the eggs, not all birds, I can give you exceptions to that, but they would be sitting on the eggs or protecting the young. And so they want to blend in, right? They want to blend in with their environment. Whereas the male is not trying to blend in because the males adaptively have placed more value on attracting a mate than maintaining their life out there in the world being brightly colored. All right, so that is sexual dimorphism. So on your notes, I need to get you caught up on your notes, sorry. Female choice, good gene hypothesis. Females choose mates on the basis of traits that improve the chances of survival. And then the fill-in for number 2, runaway hypothesis, is basis of traits that improve appearance. And then sexual selection, it is a form of natural selection, okay? Sexual selection is a form of natural selection that favors features that increase an animal's chances of mating, And then you have everything down. It's dimorphic, you've got that. Males and females differ in size and other traits. So now we're going to look at 2 other words, intersexual and intrasexual. All right. So on sexual selection, which leads to sexual dimorphism, you can look at 2 types. Intrasexual means within. Like if I said intracellular, that's something within the cell. So that would be these 2 elephants. Darn it. Here we go. Let me go back. Sorry. That would be these 2 elephants, Joe and Jim, competing to mate with females. Okay, so Joe and Jim, that's within the males. And you've seen that so many times, males fighting and competing to be the alpha male to mate with the females. Okay, so that's intrasexual. Intersexual selection is when Betty's doing the choosing, right? And so she is choosing amongst the males and she chooses, in this case, she chose Joe. And so Joe and the traits that Joe has is going to be passed on into his offspring. So on intersexual selection, female choice, I talked to you about that, which can lead to male competition. So the males are competing with each other because the female's choosing. And then that competition of the males, intrasexual, male competition, which leads to dominance, hierarchies, and territoriality. So let's look at some examples, okay? So here is sexual selection, intersexual selection. You can tell differences between males and females. And you can see right here, right, that the female is doing the choosing and the male needs to look real pretty or be able to look real strong. Okay, whereas here you can see examples of intrasexual selection. These are two giraffes fighting, and I mean, they are lethal, like they are throwing neck blows to each other, right? The deal is you don't want to fight so much. Let's say elephant one, elephant two, ranking wise, fight each other so bad that they become so bloody that elephant number 3 gets all the ladies, right? So you've got to fight, but not so much that you're not going to be able to reproduce and follow through with that. So males fighting with males, intra, within. Okay, so this male competition, that's what I'm talking about here. So these two are fighting. They don't want to fight so much that number 3 is the one who does all the mating. Okay, territories, we're going to talk about that today when we talk about communication, but calls, smells, pheromones, urine, all those, aggressive behavior, all those things can mark a territory. That territory could be for feeding and it could be for mating as well. So if you go to your notes, you have territoriality and fitness, and you have everything for territory already. Okay. Defending the territory, gibbons sing, cheetahs urinate, fight, dominance displays, and it's usually for resources like food or mates. That's what you need to put on your notes. And it's going to have costs, right, when you do that. So when you have dominance hierarchies, maybe you have heard of them as pecking orders. And if you're on like a tennis team, right? If you're number 3 singles and you think you should move up in the rank, you have to beat number 2 or number 1 in order to move up. So there are whole ways of confrontations and moving up in the rankings and moving down in the rankings. And that takes a lot of energy, a lot of food. And so there are drawbacks to those dominance hierarchies. You're larger, you require more food, you put yourself in danger because you're the one that's defending the group. And so that puts you at greater risk. All right, and I think you have all of that. So here we go. We're moving on to 32.4. So 32.4 is all about sociobiology. So it's looking at societies and looking at biology. Obviously, these are going to be populations, right? Like what's going on within the populations. So on your notes, you have sociobiology applies to the principles of evolutionary biology to the study of social behavior in animals. And so you have to do a cost-benefit analysis. Like, why would you do it, right? Why would you do that? So when you live, right, when you are a population living together in that population, now these are meerkats. And when they're living together, they have more eyes that can look for predators. You're not living alone trying to look all the way around you. You've got your whole family out there and your extended family looking for those predators. You also could distract predators, right? When you look at schools of fish swimming, they're distracting the predators. Babysitting, helping raise the young. When you look at meerkats, the teenage meerkats are the ones that babysit the younger meerkats. And then you have group signals. You can work together for common goals. So on your advantages, on the cost-benefit analysis, and realize the benefit must outweigh the cost, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't continue to do it because these are adaptive behaviors and they're persisting today, so they must be adaptive, right? So the advantages are you avoid predators, raise young, find food, or anything else on that slide. But there are disadvantages too, right? There are disadvantages when you live together as a close population. those disadvantages is you have disagreements. It's like, I want this, right? Also, a lot of times, not in human populations, but in animals, you have fewer overall young. If you're not the alpha male, the one doing the breeding, or the alpha female, then you will have fewer overall young. And also, when you live together in a population, it's easier to spread a parasite or a pathogen. And so I gave you all of those disagreements already in your notes. Okay, so then this leads us to our next topic. Okay, altruism. So in a meerkat population, you have these sentinels that sit in strategic places above where the rest of the population is, looking for predators all the time. And when they see a predator, they scream at the top of their lungs in order to warn the family below, right? Their extended family, run and hide, there's a predator. Now you need to think about this, right? The screamer is the one that's going to draw the attention of the predator, and they are putting their life at risk, right? And the term for that, when you give up your fitness, and remember, fitness is your ability to pass on your genes. It's not your heart rate or your body fat content or how much weight you can lift. Your fitness in the biology world is, can you pass on your genes? They are sacrificing their genes, or appear to be sacrificing their genes, in order to protect their offspring below. And so that term is referred to as altruism. So look at your notes real quick. Altruism is a behavior that has the potential to decrease the lifetime reproductive success of the altruist while benefiting the reproductive success of another member of the society. So does altruism really exist? Do people really give it up freely for their population? So you see this in meerkats, you see this in ants. Soldier ants will go and their whole head will come off as they're defending their population of ants. So is that altruism, or is there something else? Is it actually self-interest? So for instance, I know you know how to finish this phrase. I'll scratch your back if you'll scratch mine. Okay, so it could be that you do get something in return for that you're actually looking out for yourself, even though you are extending this favor. Now, if you die in the process, right, nobody can scratch your back because you're dead and you wouldn't know, right? So death has another whole meaning and layer to this part of it. So altruism, you remember, if you've seen this movie, right? And what did she say, right? What did she say? Do you remember? What did she say? She said, I volunteer as tribute. And do you remember, this is the Hunger Games if you don't know, sorry, cultural reference. She volunteered as tribute, not for some random person, because this had been going on for some time. She volunteered as tribute for her sister, Prim, right? Yeah, so she volunteered as tribute for her sister because she was related to her sister. She loved her sister. She thought she would stand a better chance than her sister, and that's why she did it. And so this would not be altruism, right? She was doing it actually to ensure that genes got passed on. Let me show you another slide. Okay, remember, fitness, let's go to your notes. Fitness is reproductive success. Are you able to pass on your genes? Okay, so put that on your notes. Fitness is reproductive success. So you can look at this as two ways. You can look at direct selection, like the individual. I'm defending myself. I'm keeping myself alive. I am eating, right? I'm defending my territory. And then you have indirect selection. Indirect selection is like kin, relative selection. I'm looking at the success of my relatives, right? So think about when you had that sentinel, that meerkat up on the hill screaming. He was actually increasing his fitness. Why was he increasing his fitness? Because he was making sure his whole family survived so they had time to run and hide. So it is not really altruism, right? Because he didn't sacrifice his genes. He maintained his fitness by ensuring that his family survived. So on inclusive fitness, on your notes, genes can be passed on in two ways. Direct, and then it goes from parent to offspring, reproductive success of an individual, and indirect. a relative that reproduces called kin selection, and you see this in bees. All right, now here you can see this in chimpanzees. So in their population, if there's a coupling going on, if there's some copulation going on, they don't try to interrupt and fight. They just watch. They're voyeuristic and they just watch because they're like, yay, for the team, we're getting our genes passed on because they are so closely related. Just like ants and bees are closely related. So it's like team win when those genes get passed on. Now, there is something called reciprocal altruism. Okay. Now, in reciprocal altruism, I really wish they wouldn't use the word altruism because it's not truly altruistic. Because in reciprocal altruism, this is back to the I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. Vampire bats, they live in caves. At night, they go out and attack an herbivore, like get on its back. It's not like they can fight it or anything. They get on its back, they cut a little hole, and they start drinking the blood out of the herbivore. And then they fly back to their cave at night. If in their little pods, where I don't actually know the technical term, but we'll just say pods, in their little grouping in their caves where they live, and I can't even remember, I want to say like maybe 10 bats are in a pod or so. If one of them didn't get a blood meal and they're starving, then all they do is turn to their neighbor in their pod and lick the cheek of their neighbor, and their neighbor will regurgitate blood that they had and share their meal in order to keep their neighbor alive. Now, why will they do that? Because they know their neighbor would do that for them. So that's the reciprocal altruism. I'm giving up some of my fitness, but I know you're going to give it right back to me, right? It's like, I'll do this favor, but only because I'm expecting a favor in return. Now, in these situations, if let's say bat 1 licks and bat 2 gives some blood, okay, so we're both alive, we're flying. Now, bat 2 didn't get a meal. So he turns to bat 1 and is waiting for his reciprocal altruism. If bat 1 goes, what? I don't hear you. What? Mm-hmm. And doesn't give any blood back and doesn't return the favor, the whole pod will remember and shun that bat. And if he doesn't get a blood meal sometime, nobody will give him blood anymore because he didn't return it, because they want to decrease those. I mean, they don't know they're doing this, but you're decreasing that behavior so that you don't have that perpetuate in the group, because overall it's not adaptive. So that bat will just die. So that is reciprocal altruism and vampire bats. And I gave you everything on that already. All right, last topic in part 2 here, and that is animal communication. And when animals communicate, again, this is within your population. You can also communicate outside of your population. I'm full. Yes, okay. But it's an action by a sender that influences the behavior of the receiver, right? So the sender sends the message and it should influence the behavior of the receiver. This involves cooperation. It's beyond just reproduction. It's not like do a dance, now let's have sex. It's beyond that. And if it's the same species, it can benefit both. In symbiotic relationships, it can benefit both too in mutualism. And then I had this last one, so I said hi. So let's look at the different types. The first type, introduction, sorry. You got 1, you got 2 on communication and action by a sender that may influence the behavior of the receiver. All right, and now we have 4 types of communication. So the first one is chemical communication, obviously chemicals. So he's spraying on this tree. You've seen your dogs pee in different places, right? You're spreading some sort of chemical to communicate something. It might be like, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, or it might be, hey, baby, and you're trying, I like to get to know you. So there are those types of messages as well. So chemical communication, do you think it works day or night or both? It's a chemical, day or night or both. Hopefully you said both, right? Because it doesn't matter if it's dark or light outside. So it is effective both day and night. One example of chemical communication is a pheromone. A pheromone is a chemical signal sent in low concentration that is passed between members of the same species. And then I gave you several examples like antelopes marking twigs with their eye secretions, etc. Okay, next. I'm going to show you this in class. This is this girl named Mel, and she can like mimic every animal on the planet. It's pretty cool. And that's the introduction actually to auditory communication. Auditory communication, you've heard it before. Calls, barks, screeches, right? Sounds to attract a mate, to defend yourself. And when you combine signaling, you can get specificity, right? When you couple the auditory with the visual, then you get a more specific communication signal. So auditory, let me ask you this, day, night, or both? Will auditory work in the day, the night, or both? Hopefully you said both, right? So auditory is faster than chemical communication and effective during the day and the night. And I gave you several examples there. All right, visual communication is what you see, right? I mean, if you imagine your mom or dad angry at you and you couldn't hear them, but you saw their face, would you know they were angry at you? Would you know if they were happy with you or disappointed at you, right? So visual communication, we do it all the time. Body signals, right? Like, go ahead, talk, Mrs. Sloan, I don't care. Oh, Mrs. Sloan, I'm interested, right? We communicate all the time exactly what we're feeling. There are people that's their whole job is just to read your body signals, those messages that you're sending subtly about what you're thinking. Okay, so visual communication, do you think it works best in the day, the night, or both? Hopefully you said day, right? Because visual, so we can see it, right? Now there are exceptions, right, that you can think about, like fireflies or things that work at night. So visual communication, most often used by species that are active during the day. And these are also those complex courtship behaviors, which can be a mix of visual and auditory. And then I'll show you that video too. All right, the last one is tactile communication. Now, you experience this all the time, right? If like you were saying something that was inappropriate and somebody squeezed your arm, you would know like, oh, I guess I wasn't supposed to say that, or they kick you underneath the table, right? Or like your dog, how do you communicate to your dog? Now it's a different species. You might pet them thoughtfully, or rub the shoulder of a friend that you care about. That is tactile communication. You see it right here when they're grooming each other, right? So this is information that is passed from one animal to another by touch. Okay, so there's touching that's going on. Okay, like grooming, etc. Now, the one you need to know that people usually don't put underneath the umbrella of tactile communication is the bee dance. And the reason is because what do we do usually when somebody's dancing? We're just watching, right? So you think that it's a visual communication, like in a reproductive mating dance, right? A bird's jumping around and trying to attract. So he's performing, right? So that's how we think about dances, but not the bee dance. The bee dance is all about the touch. And the reason is the hive is dark. They cannot necessarily see each other in the hive, so they feel the dancer. Now, I want to teach you what the dance means, because this is like pretty incredible. All right. Imagine your hive on the vertical. Okay. So your hive, there's up and there's down, right? So what the bee will do is it'll get a little waggle dance going in a certain line. So let's say it waggles like right here. Let's say it just waggles straight up, and it comes around, waggle, 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 comes around, waggle, 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 comes around. What that means when it flies straight, does its little waggle dance straight up the hive, is he's telling all the bees, right? Or she is telling all the bees that you just need to fly straight to the sun. Fly in the same direction where the sun is, and you will find that food. If the bee does it at an angle, right here, right? Straight up would be here. Now you can see this bee is going waggle, 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 come around, waggle, 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 come around. This angle that you measure right here, that is the angle in relationship to the sun that the bees need to fly in order to find that food. Okay, so all that's doing is giving you the direction of where to fly, but it's not telling you how far, right? The how far is in the number of waggles they do, because they like shimmy, shimmy, come around, shimmy, shimmy, and they come around. So the shimmy, shimmy, the waggle part tells them how far to fly. The angle off center tells them, right, what direction to fly. So riddle me this. If the bee, instead of going straight up like this, goes straight down and around, straight down and around, what is that bee communicating to the rest of the hive? If instead of going straight up, it's going straight down. Tell me. Hopefully you said fly away from the sun. So see the sun, turn around, fly in the opposite direction, right? Second thing I want to ask you is this. Will the bee dance change throughout the day? Apply what you know. Will the bee dance change throughout the day? Hopefully you said yes. Why? The food didn't move. The food didn't move. What moved throughout the day? The sun. That's right. The sun moved throughout the day. Therefore, the dance needs to change, not the waggle. Waggle won't change because the food's staying in the same spot. But in relationship to the sun, the way where you take your waggle, that part will change. So on your notes, you have everything for tactile communication, right? You have information is passed from one animal to another, and then I explain the waggle dance. So, yeah, I think that that is it. And I'm glad you watched the second video, and I hope you are having a great day.